So as I said, this is going to be a little bit more of a review of what we've done in the past week. But we're also going to go over some more validations. We're going to go over how to create partials and what partials are. And we're going to work with a many-to-many relationship. So we have an application already. We're not going to start from scratch this time, but we have this application reservation tracker, which if we check out our models, we can see that we have two models. We have a customer and we have a restaurant. Now, essentially what we want to do, and we can also look at our schema. Essentially what we want to do is we want to connect the customer with the restaurant. And as you may have guessed, this is called reservation tracker. They're going to be connected via a reservation. So a customer can have many reservations, and a restaurant can have many customers. And customer can have many restaurants through reservations. A restaurant can have many customers also through reservations. So many to many. First of all, I know that this might be like a silly task, but if we were to draw this out, what would the domain modeling look like for this kind of a relationship? We have customers, restaurants, and reservations. Someone help me out.
Do customers on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the line with the fork on the right to reservations.
Okay, perfect. To reservations. Okay. What else do we need?
And then on the right side of that, the fork pointing towards reservations with a single line to the restaurant.
Perfect. Restaurant. All right, cool. So again, many to many, this is a very common domain model to have. And we're gonna build that out today. What kind of the end goal is of this lecture is to have, in the end, have a reservations page where we can create a new reservation, so reservations new. And we can create a reservation with the customer and the restaurant in mind. So we want to have drop downs where we can select either one or both. And then we're also going to take a look at, because this is like a little bit more focused on validations, we're going to take a look at what kind of validations we can add and how we can display those error messages if the validations don't go through, how we can display those to the user. And as I mentioned, a lot of what we're going to be doing today, we've done already, like almost like 90-something%. We've already touched upon. The one thing that's going to be new is taking a look at partials, which will be pretty quick. And then again, the rest will just kind of be review. All right, so I want to show you this one GIF that we have in here. So because we're talking about validations, right? You never know what your user is going to do with your website, right? You can imagine if you've built it a certain way, like everybody's going to just know how to use it, but that's not always true. Even if you give a user a glass of water and don't explain how that is to be used, you might run into some trouble. So that's why we have validations. That's why we have error messages to show to the user so that we can be sure that no bad data enters our database, and we can communicate with the user as to things that they need to fix. Okay, so let's actually get started by finishing up our schema. We need to add some migrations, we need to add some models, we need to add a controller, we don't have one yet, for reservations. So if I already have the model, the restaurant and the customer, and I want to add the reservation to this, can someone think of like a Rails generator that I could use in order to do that?
Rails G model.
Yeah, Rails G model. Cool. And then what else do I need to write here?
Reservation. And then do customer :references.
Customer references.
And restaurant references. I can't remember if the table name needs to be pluralized or not. I think singular. I know references needs to be plural, but I can't remember if customer and restaurant needs to be plural.
It also needs to be capitalized.
Yeah, so the capitalization shouldn't matter, I believe, if you say like reservation or reservation.
Yeah, the capitalization won't matter.
And this, at this, for the
ahead, Brian.
generator, it doesn't matter. Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we use the resource instead of model?
Sure, absolutely. Since we do need to create a controller, a model, and a migration and our views folder, resources might be a little bit quicker here. If we were to do this like one by one, that would be fine too. But let's go ahead and save some time. I'm also going to add some more information to my reservation. Let's add like a date. Will be date time, and then let's add like party size.
Make it a float. Oh.
Float. You can have 3.4 people join your reservation. Okay, cool. Any questions here about this generator that we're using, or anything that we've written in here?
Just as a practice thing, I found myself starting to avoid resources just because of all the extra code, but there was just a note in a lab about it. So I wasn't sure how real that is in terms of general practice or best practice or convention or that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So it's a similar story as with like a scaffold, and it's I got this wrong earlier. It's resource and not resources. So it's similar to if you were to create a scaffold, except scaffold creates a whole lot more for you. If you want to have like the fine-grained control of adding the model, adding the controller, and all of that separately, then go ahead and you use your model controller generators. If you want to save a little bit of time and you know that you need all of these things anyway, I also added the no test framework. Let's take a look at what's created for us here. Like we need
what
to.
happens if you put customers for the references, or like if you pluralized it? Would it just
We can
not
try
work?
that. Yeah, we can try that out. I just wanted to finish my thought here real quick. So what we get created here is we have our migration, we have a model, we have a controller, we have a views folder, and everything here, the only other thing that isn't usually added by any of our other generators is this resources macro in our routes file. So everything else though is like if we create the same thing via the model and the controller generator, all of these things are created for us anyway. So it's more of like a whatever you feel most comfortable with. If you feel like you need to create all of these things anyway and you don't need any kind of like fine-grained control, then just go ahead and use the resource generator. I would still recommend against using the scaffold generator because it creates just too much stuff that we don't need. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
That really does, thank you. And being able
Okay.
to see that. For some reason, I had this thought that resource created like a CoffeeScript thing and but I might have gotten them mixed up with something else. So thank you.
Yeah, and then also I added the no test framework flag, so we don't have any of those tests in here. So Nathan, you were saying so let's delete this. If we made our like customers plural here, is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Oh, let's delete. Okay. Let's see. So if we look at now, if we look at our model, you can already see that you have a little bit of a problem here because we have our belongs to relationship with customers. This should always be singular. So maybe that's like a good way to kind of test, you know, if everything was right the way that you wrote it, but they should always be singular. So let's delete this again.
And then if you want to delete it, are you just putting a D in front of everything there?
Yeah, so instead of generate, it's delete, or instead of D, it's G.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And you need to add all the other, like the resource, reservation, all the rest?
No, I don't think you do. I think we tried this last week, right? If you just said Rails D resource and then reservation, that should also work, I believe.
Okay. Cool.
Any other questions here? And then also make sure you double check your models. Obviously, we still need to do a little bit of work in our models, but we also want to check, we want to make sure that our migrations are correct. So I want to take a look at this. We got our date, we got our party size, and we got our references to our customer and our restaurant. We could also just not use a generator, right? We could literally like create all of these files manually if we wanted to. And then we could also, we don't have to use this references here. We could just say t.integer for customer ID. This is like the most basic way that we could do this, right? Restaurant ID. That would create a valid relationship between our customer and our restaurant and our reservation. So I'm gonna leave the references in here and let's go ahead and migrate. Let's migrate. And then I need to update my models, right? If you remember, whenever, oh, that did not work. Let's see what's going on here. Whenever we add this resources, oh, okay, I may have already created this earlier. Get rid of this real quick. So whenever you create this like resources or the references relationship with a generator, you do get the one-sided relationship between the join model and your other two models, but the inverse is not true. So our customer model right now is blank. Our restaurant model is also blank. What do we have to update here in these two models to make our relationships complete?
Has many
Has
reservations.
many.
Has many what?
As many.
Has many reservations.
Reservation.
Has many reservations,
Reservations
and has
and
many
then
restaurants through reservations.
Perfect. Restaurants through.
Reservation.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Okay. What about our restaurant model? What do we need
As
here?
many reservations.
Opposite.
Yeah,
Has
opposite.
many customers.
Mm-hmm.
Has many has many reservation. Has many
Mhm.
customers through reservations.
Yeah.
Over each other.
Customers. And make sure that you have these be plural. Because with the many, you know, just like you would say in plain old English, a restaurant has many reservations, not has many reservation, and with the belongs to, it's always singular. Okay, how can I test out my relationships if they're working correctly?
Inside the console, you can try to do it.
I can try my relationships in my console, absolutely. So I can say, what do we have? Customer I'm just gonna, so if you wanna, by the way, if you wanna like, if you're not quite sure what attributes you have on a model, you can always write out like customer.new or reservation.new, and it will show you, we have an ID, name, a Boolean of Hungary. So we need to fill all of these out. So if we say customer.create, we have Bob, and then we have Hungary, true. And this will create a customer for us. Cool. I prefer whenever, like, if it's like a simple relationship, like maybe like a has many belongs to, I think it makes sense to use the Rails console, even if it's a has many through. But I think sometimes it's a little bit easier to see how the relationships are set up and what you need to pass in where if you add some data to your seeds file. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I happen to already have done this earlier, so we don't have to spend a whole bunch of time here doing this. So what I did here is I created different customers, and we already have Bob. So let's make this customer.first. So I created different customers. I created different restaurants here, and then I created reservations. And what's important again, and you know this from mod 1, is that whenever we create a reservation, we pass in the customer as well as the restaurant, and we want to relate those instances, right? We talked about this last time. One other thing I could do here, oops, could say customer ID is c1.id. If you prefer this, because like this is how you have the customer IDs in your database, then go ahead and do that. In my opinion, it's a little bit easier to think about it this way. You just pass in an instance without having to worry about the ID, a little bit shorter too. And this should create all of our relationships. So let's seed our database. Any questions here about the way that we seeded?
Is there a quicker way to do all this?
Yeah, you could. So you could do something like 5 times do, and then you could like create 5 customers, and then you could use something. Has someone used? Did someone use Faker in their mod 1 project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could use something like Faker. And you can get like, if you have customers with a name, you can get like a fake name, right? So if you have, so make sure that you have, I guess let's go ahead and do this real quick. Make sure that you have Faker in your gem file. I think it's in here yet. So let's go ahead and add that. Is this helpful if we go through this, or is everybody like, I know how to do this, or? Yeah. All right. If we want to create like 5 customers, right? We could say something like customer dot create, right? And then a customer has a name, and then we want to use Faker name dot name. That will give us a random name. And then the other thing though that you have to keep in mind is whenever you're creating like a reservation here, and then we'll just, I don't know, we'll say everybody's hungry. Whenever you create a reservation, you have to pass in a customer in a restaurant, right? You can also say something like 5 times do, and then whenever you create a reservation for the customer, you don't have a reference back to that customer directly anymore, right? So you could do something like, let's see, customer, get like a random customer, dot all, and then we can grab a random customer from like the length of all customers.
Could you use
like this.
sample?
What's that? Oh, sample?
Dot sample, yeah.
Does that work? Yeah.
Customer
I think-
dot sample, I think.
Okay. Feel like that is the better choice. Let's try that out real quick in our console. Customer. Not sample. Cool, perfect. Thank you. This will always give you like a different one. Perfect. Same thing for restaurant. Just make sure that like you remember this because you're not going to have these references back to those customers and restaurants anymore. But that would be a little bit of a quicker way if that makes sense. All right, cool. So we have a bunch of customers, we have a bunch of restaurants, and we have reservations already too. So we have our data already done. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to, let's start our Rails server here. We want to be able to go to something like reservations/new to create a new reservations. What do I need to do to fix my error here that I'm getting?
You need to create the action within the controller.
Exactly. What action is that?
Reservations.
Def new.
New, because this is for the new page, right? Create a new reservation.
Yeah.
Awesome. What else do I need?
That's create. And then
I'm going to
new view.
We need a new view. That's exactly right. New.html.erb. Cool. Let's put in create a new reservation. Awesome. So this is all hooked up correctly now. I'm also going to create a new file for edit because we are going to talk about partials. But let's start with our new. So if I want to create a new reservation, what do I need? What do I need to write in my ERB file? How do I add a form here?
Form 4.
Form 4. I need my ERB tags, right? Don't forget the equal sign for form 4. And what's the syntax here for form 4?
Pass in the instance variable, form 4 at reservation.
Mm-hmm.
Do. F. Yeah.
Awesome. Make sure you end this. Awesome. What else do I need?
Oh, and then for
labels
form
and
4,
the
you
field.
need the equal, right? For the Ruby ERB
Correct.
type. Okay, cool.
Make sure you have this equal here. What was that now?
You need to add the labels and the field that you actually want to fill in the form. So F label first.
Yeah, I think we have like a date, right? And then, so I think it's just
Numeric.
date. Where'd it go? Reservation. It's date. The format is date time. And then we have party size, and then we have our customer and our. Okay, so here, does someone know for a date what kind of a helper I can use here? So it's not a, what would it usually be if it's just a normal input field?
Text field.
Text.
Text field? Yep. Awesome. Now, what can you imagine what it might be for a date instead of a text field?
Date field.
Date field. Let's try that out. It's almost too easy, right? All right, let's do the same thing for, I believe we have party size. What might this be for, what's that? Number field? Uh-huh. Exactly, let's check that out. Okay, so first of all, I gotta fix this error that I'm getting. What is this all about?
Inside a controller, you need to add reservation. In new, add at reservation equal to reservation.new.
Perfect. Make sure that you have your instance variable here to build your form around. That's important. And now we can see, hopefully, that we have this super nice date field with a date picker. This one is a a number field where we can increment, decrement. And let's see, what else do we want? I think that's it for the like main fields. Let me add a submit real quick, and then we'll worry about the relationship. Okay. Cool. So if I want to create a relationship with because the reservation joins the customer and the restaurant together, how would I go about doing that if I wanted maybe like a drop down?
You can call the restaurant.all in the form or in the controller, right? So that you can
Yeah.
populate it.
That's right. If we want to set this up in here, we could do that here. Restaurants. .all. And then the same, same for our customer. Okay. And then what do I need to add to create a drop down here?
F.collection.
Label.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, both of those are correct.
Yeah.
Let's start with our label. We'll make this for restaurant. What would this be? What would the label be for?
Restaurant ID.
Restaurant ID, and we'll see in a second why. And then someone mentioned collection select, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And what arguments do I need here for collection select?
You need to have the restaurants.
I need to have all of my restaurants, right? What else?
Restaurant's ID and name.
Restaurants. I need somehow the ID. I need the name. I need one more thing. At the very beginning. What's the first argument for collection select in our case?
The parameter that it's getting set to, so the restaurant ID in this case as a symbol.
Exactly. And this is going to have to match our label, right? Because otherwise it's not gonna, our input selection isn't gonna work like we might expect. It's not super important, again, that you like have this label here, but it's just nice user experience. So first one, restaurant ID. Second argument is all of our restaurants that we get from the controller. Here we could also say restaurant.all. In fact, let's go ahead and do it that way because of some other things that we're gonna do later. So let's just say restaurant.all here. And then the next argument is going to be what you want to send as the value to your controller. So if we select a restaurant ID, we want the value for that restaurant ID key to be the actual ID of the restaurant. The last argument is going to be the name, which is going to be the label on the drop-down items. So if we take a look at our drop-down, what did I do? Restaurant. I spelled this wrong. Undefined local variable and method restaurant ID. All right, so let's make sure that our, let's take a look at our schema. We have restaurant ID. To spell that differently somehow? Just in case. Oh, that looks good. And then we have restaurant.all.
Oh, do you need a colon at all?
Oh, thank you for my restaurant ID. Thanks. Awesome. Yeah, sometimes it's just about the details, right? So if we take a look at our form now, we can see that we have this nice little drop down for the different restaurants that we created. and we can select a restaurant to create our reservation with. And again, this ID right here, whenever we select a restaurant, it's going to be the ID of that restaurant that's going to be sent to our controller as the value for the key of restaurant ID. So our params hash is going to look something like this, where we have like a date, some kind of date, right? And then, sorry. So our top level key would be reservation. And then we have our date, and then we also have our restaurant ID. And depending on the restaurant that we pick, this value is going to change. So that corresponds to this argument right here. So if we choose a different one, this one's going to be different value. And then this restaurant ID is coming from our first argument right here for our collection select. Okay, let's build another collection select. And this one is going to be for our customer. And I'm just going to copy paste this. And instead of restaurant ID, we're going to have customer ID. Again, feel free to look up the syntax here. I would just make sure that, like, remember last time we talked about collection select, in the documentation, if you don't scroll down far enough, it will tell you that the first argument is going to be this reservation object, but because we are inside of a form 4, we don't have to pass in this reservation object into our collection select. It automatically is essentially automatically passed in for us because we're inside of this form 4. All right, any questions about our form right here that we built?
Can you show how the date, like if you click on the, yeah, cool.
Yeah, so if you have a, what's that?
I can go ahead and finish.
If you create, so if you look at this also, let's make this a little bigger. If you can, oops. See right here, we are creating an input field with the type of date. That's really all that changes about the input field. Same with our number, right? Our number input field has a type of number, and that actually changes the input field. And you're going to get this drop down. It's going to probably look a little different depending on the browser that you're using, operating system that you're using. But you should always have this kind of date picker here where you can select a date. And then when you create the reservation, it automatically is in like a date format. Cool. Any other questions here?
If we didn't want to have a drop down of the customer, we would just need to populate that as a label with the similar arguments.
If you don't want to have a drop down for the customer,
correct. So if we're like, say we're on the phone with our customer, they want to make a reservation at any of the restaurants in our drop down, we would then ask the customer for their name in the form field. How do we tie that to the database?
So that would
be similar to what we have.
Yeah, so that would be like a nested form. I think you've had a couple of labs on these nested forms where you can essentially create like a customer within the reservation form. We're probably not going to go into that today, but it would then, like the customer part would look similar to what you might have on like a customer /new page, right? So if you had a customer's new page, it would essentially be like this other form within that form, kind of. And if you really just have a name, I guess you just have to have one input field. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's work a little bit with partials here. So I know before we even finish up our reservation create, we can do that in a second in the controller. Let's create a partial. Does someone know what a partial is or what it's for?
It's like a snippet of HTML that you can write once and then basically throw into multiple pages.
Yeah, exactly. So something that you may have noticed is like once you have a new form and you have an edit form, they're going to look very, very similar, right? This would be like edit your reservation or something. So your new and your edit are essentially the same thing. So what we can do here is, and by the way, this isn't going to be like on the code challenge or anything, but you should definitely know how to do this. So what we can do is we can create something called a partial. Partial will always start with an underscore, and it's common in this case if we have a form that connects our new and our edit to just call it form.html.erb. Again, make sure you have your underscore. That is what like shows you that this is a partial. And then inside of this partial, this is where our main code for the form is going to go. So I'm just going to paste what I had from the new. I'm going to remove my header because I want those to be different for the edit and for the new. And then we'll make a couple of other small changes, but essentially, all we have to do now is, let's go to our new, is we want to get rid of our form here on our new page because now this form lives in our partial. We just want to reference that form, right? So what we can do is we can render a partial. So render partial, and then we essentially just tell Rails what kind of partial do we want to render. What's the name of the partial? Note here that this does not have an underscore. This is our form right here that we created. Without an underscore, that's just a syntax that you use. If you render a partial, you omit the underscore. If you create the file, you add the underscore. And then this will render that partial for us. That is right here. So everything inside of here with the label, input, the date, and all that stuff, the party size, it will create that form. It will essentially like redirect to this like partial and render that form for us. Now let's see. We can do the same thing for our edit right here. So if we take the same code, remove our form here, and we also want to render a partial here, so we can get rid of all the other code. I'm going to keep my h1 because for the edit and the new, that should probably be different. And now if we take a look at our new page, we can see that we see the exact same form that we saw previously, right? One other thing that you can do that you may ask yourself, so also notice that I didn't actually have to pass along my @reservation variable, right? This is automatically done for us. Like we automatically have access to this instance variable @reservation. If we want to specify, say, like a good example for this is if you have like a form for one item, and then you are somehow iterating over items somewhere, and then for each one you're creating a form, you might want to send a different piece of information here to build your form around. It might not be @reservation. It might be a local variable called reservation. So what you can do in order to pass information to a form is you can add, where are we here? And let's go to the new. You can add something called locals. These are like extra variables that you want to pass along. So if we had, if we wanted to like more be explicit about passing along our reservation, we could say reservation comes from @reservation. Not even sure that you can do this actually. So you would specify the name of the variable. This is the key within that hash. And then whatever value that should point to. And then we have to make sure that in our form, we use that variable reservation. I'm gonna actually keep this at @reservation. I'm gonna show you like a different example. One thing that I would like is I would like the button text to change. So let's create a variable here called button text and make this for a new create a new reservation. And then we are going to do the same thing for our, let's actually just write this out again, for our edit. So again, we pass in locals. We can pass in as much as, you can pass in as much as you want here. I'm also going to use button text here. And this is like update reservation. Right, and now we can use this button text variable inside of our form. So wherever we had this text hard-coded, we're going to use this button text variable. So it's going to replace it for new and the edit, depending on what type of information we pass. Let's make sure that this is working. We're getting the correct text here for the edit. We don't have a new page, we're getting correct text for the new. We don't have an edit page right now, so, but trust me, this works. We could add one real quick. But this is the general idea of partials. Remember that you have your underscore and that you could pass along information to partials. It will just kind of save you a little bit of time writing code, and it will make it possible to not have to duplicate a bunch of code, especially with the new and edit. That's a very common thing to do.
Can you show the form page really quick, just so I can see the button? Oh, okay.
We're just using the variable here instead of, previously we had the string. Just replace it with that variable.
What did you mean that you said that you can pass many data inside of the curly brackets?
So yeah, so you can just like continue adding stuff here. So another variable, is that what you meant?
Okay.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so
like
you can just
like
kind of
say like the date I want to change it from, I don't know.
Sure.
Order
yeah,
date
if you,
to, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So if you want, I don't know, if you want the label to be different for the date on the new page than the edit page, you could pass that in as well.
Cool.
Question.
Other questions? Yeah.
Can a partial render another partial?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't see why not. Yeah. So if you create it like, let's see, let's try it out. So within my form, we want to render another partial. Render partial, and then it's called another, right? So let's put something in here, and yep, we can see the partial.
I was thinking in the use case. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was thinking in the use case, like if you had different pages that used basically the same form, but some of the fields were changed, so you had one additional field in certain things. I was wondering how you do that. And I think that just answered my question. Unless
Sure.
it's already designed to do that because Rails.
You can also create like form help, like what are they called? Like form utilities. I don't think, like form helpers, I guess. So if you have let me think of a good example. If you have like a very specific thing on a page, let's see, like a logo maybe, and you want like a certain, certain text next to the logo, and it has to be like very specific. This is maybe more of like a use case for using something like a form helper, like a view helper, I guess it'd be called, where you can pass in like specific pieces of your view. But I guess you can use a partial for that too. I don't know. I'm kind of talking myself into a corner here. Yeah, you can render partials with partials, and you can kind of do as much as you want with that as you wish. All right. Any other questions about partials? Okay.
Can you show the edit page?
Yeah. Yeah. So at that point, we just have this one line of code. And the only thing that's really important about this is this right here. We're saying render partial, right? And then the name of the partial. What we added here was these extra variables that we're passing in to change the button text.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so let's finish up the creation of a reservation. So once we hit our create button, what do we still have to do? Let's close some of these. What do we have to do inside of our controller to actually create a new reservation?
Do a reservation, like at reservation equals reservation.new. Pass in reservation params.
Not spell this right. Okay. Reservation params. Okay, where do we get those from?
We need to define that as a private method.
Awesome.
Which will be params.
Params.
Require. Yeah, someone else go.
I'll just go ahead and finish it here. What do we have? A date.
Party size.
Party size.
Restaurant
ID. Yeah, and restaurant ID.
Can you go over what the params and reservation params are doing?
Yeah. Could someone else explain why do we have these reservation params here? What's that good for?
Yeah. So the params.require method is part of the strong params thing because it won't allow this way if somebody rewrites some of the HTML in the developer tool and they like add some param, it won't accept that from this page. So .require is basically saying that if you have for example, a hash called params, it's going to have a hash in it with key of reservation. And then in that reservation key is going to be, it's going to allow date, party size, customer ID, restaurant ID.
Exactly.
So then what's happening in reservation.new is it's taking reservation params, is returning just that reservation hash with those keys and creating an instance with whatever's coming out of the page. And each
someone to go next.
From the form.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I understand now. I got a little bit confused at first with the throwing in the reservation params and it then not having the reservation params. But I see now. Thank you.
Cool.
Do not also permit asterisk args.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can splat it.
For sure. I personally like to write it out because it's, I feel like it's nicer to follow, different attributes that we have. You can write it as args if you want, up to you as long as it works in the end. Cool. So we are passing on our reservation params. What do we need to do next here?
Save.
We need to save.
Yeah.
Okay.
At reservation.save, and we should add a if statement. So if it's saved, we want to redirect them to the correct page.
So this is like success, and then this
another
is
one. Render the new page.
Awesome. To at reservation probably. Cool. And otherwise we want to render the new. All right, let's try this out. I guess we can write this as a symbol also, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's create a new reservation. Tomorrow, do for Chipotle, that's fine. Create a reservation. Awesome, so we don't have a show yet, that's fine. I guess we could create one, but that doesn't really matter a whole lot. The point is that we are actually, this would be, yeah. The point is that we actually created a reservation. We can check that in our console as well, but I am pretty confident that that worked. Now, if we want to use our, what's a way that we can get into this else statement? What do I need to do in order to even make it possible to get into here?
You need to
You need
create
write some
validations
Exactly.
inside a model.
Exactly. That was so nice in sync. Models, validations. All right, so validation on which model?
For reservation.
Exactly. So if I want to create a new reservation, let's see, what validations could you think of that you might want on a reservation?
We want to make sure that we have a date, which is valid date. It's not like it can be only in the future and not in the past state.
Oh, it has to be, yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's really
greater than the date that we are.
Right. Do you know how we would write that?
We can do numeric, I think, something like this, and then we'll have, I don't remember the whole thing.
Yeah, I haven't done that with a date either.
Be greater than, less than, something like this, inside the curly brackets.
Yeah, so
I didn't find anything in the Rails guide, but I found something earlier that walked through it.
Right. So what I'm thinking is that we're probably not going to be able to just compare like numbers, right? Because dates are a little bit more complex than that. I don't know if there's a validation that comes out of the box. It doesn't seem like, and Brad mentioned that he couldn't find one either. What we could do is we can write a custom validation. So we're actually gonna write some custom validations, or like one custom validation in a little bit, and then this custom validation can make sure that the date that we put in is beyond like today, and it's not in the past. So that's a really good point. Let's write some like simple validation. Let's do one for we can do one for our like party size, to have like a certain size, maybe it has to be greater than 1 and less than 20 or something like that. Does someone know how I go about determining if I have a number to keep it in a certain range?
Numericality.
Numericality, yeah.
Curly brackets, length.
What's that?
I think length, and then you in, and then to have the range.
Oh, okay. So length, and then where's that? Like this?
Yeah. You can do, instead of is 5, so in, and then like 1.20 or whatever it will be.
Okay, isn't it less than or greater? Like less than a certain number and greater than.
Yeah, this would be more of like a
the number of people.
This would be more of like the length of the actual string, I believe. Yeah, so we could do something like greater than. We could do like greater than or equal to, maybe. Do 1. And let's do less than or equal to 20. Cool. All right, so now if we refresh and type in 50 here, create a new reservation, we are now in our ByBug. Does someone have some like background noise on? If you could mute yourself, that would be
I'm so sorry.
No worries. So we are now in our ByBug, so we are in our else statement here, where we can take a look at our reservation, right? And we can take a look at the errors that reservation has. Right now we have only one, which is the less than or equal to. If we want to grab the full messages, we can write errors.full messages where we get party size must be less than or equal to 20. Cool. How do we show this message to our user?
Quick question.
Yeah.
In that validation, couldn't you also just do length and then like 1.20, like the range? Does that also work?
Like, yeah, so we were just talking about that. I guess let's try it out. So it would be like this, right? I thought that would only work for like strings, but let's try it.
Oh.
Like so.
I don't think that's going to work because it's going to try to call the .length method on that. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, it's like in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what this gives us. So if we say like 60, that's fine. So it actually created the item. Yeah, it will probably look for like it might actually like it'll probably look actually at the length of the number. It might put in so if we did like
600
1 to 2, yeah, and then we type in something that's like beyond 2 digits, that should get us an, yeah, that actually gets us an error. It kind of validates a different thing. If we somehow, yeah, but it's still a valid validation. Maybe that's something that you want, like you can only have 2-digit numbers or something like that.
No, yeah, you're right.
So it's possible though. Okay, so we want to be able to show these error messages that we're going to get. We'll add some more validations as well. We want to be able to show this to the user. How do we do that?
Inside of the form.
Inside of our form. Awesome. Now we have this super helpful partial, which means that we don't need to do the error handling in the new and in the edit, but we can just do it inside of our form partial. So that's pretty neat. Okay, so how do I actually like show my errors here if I want to show them at the top?
ERB tag, squid, and then with the equal sign. Then would it be like at reservations dot error full underscore messages dot each, and then you loop through that?
Each do. Awesome. Yeah, we're on the right track here. If I want to show, so if I have this like each do I need an equal sign here?
No.
No.
Because I don't want to like actually show the iteration. I only want to show like each one of the items. So if I were to now print out here, my error, then I would need my equal sign. I don't want to show.
Yeah, this might be a slight rabbit hole, but like on line 5, the loop for the form 4.
Yeah, form 4 is an exception to that. Whenever we use a form helper like form 4 or form with, we need to make sure that we add our equal sign. But if we have any kind of other Ruby code that isn't like a form helper or something like that, we don't add the equal sign, because otherwise, let's see what it looks like. Also, the reason, if maybe you can think of it this way, for the form 4, what Rails is actually doing is besides adding the labels and the input fields for every one of our attributes, we also need to add this form wrapper, right? So if we look at our form in the end, we can see that we don't just have the input fields and the labels, but we have this form wrapper. You can kind of think of, and it's more or less what's happening anyway, like this will create your form wrapper around your form. If you weren't showing that, then
syntactic, yeah, that's syntactic sugar right there for line 5. I've been wondering about why the form 4 start do loop requires it, because it's providing the form tags on line 5, whereas line 1, the do each doesn't print anything to the screen. Okay.
Right. I wouldn't like necessarily call it syntactic sugar, but it's like what like you said, like what Rails the fact that the Rails adds that form to your page. Okay, so we are getting an error. That's good. We're getting error that says undefined method errors for null class. Because I had to have a typo. Sorry, that was my bad. So if we look at our, remember I added this equal sign here, right? This gives us, well, actually, yeah. So if we remove it, it doesn't show us anything. But if we show it, it like shows us if we had error messages, it would show them to us inside of an array because. Does someone know what each always returns?
Original array.
Original array, exactly. So it'll just show us that original array in addition to like any error messages that we're printing out, but this is not necessarily something that we want to show. What else do I mostly like usually want to wrap around this?
You want to check that there are errors inside?
Exactly. I want to make sure that there even are any errors. And the reason for that, like obviously we can't see anything like if there aren't any errors, but say we want to have like an unordered list, right? We don't want to be adding all of this like bulk code that isn't supposed to be shown to the user. So we want to wrap some kind of if statement around this to make sure that we actually have error messages. So we can use this at reservation.errors. We can say any, like, are there any error messages? And then we show this iteration here. Let's wrap this. So we get like an unordered list. Cool. And let's create some error messages. 60. And we are seeing now that the party size must be greater than or less than or equal to 20. Questions about this, the way of showing our error messages here? We're going to do this in a little bit different way as well. And I'm just going to have you decide which one you prefer. So one other thing that we can do, as you may have noticed, let's see, do we want to?
Quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
If we wanted to write a custom message, because right now that's only showing the validation error called party size must be less than or equal to 20. If we wanted to show a custom message every time it validated party size, and it just says party size must be between 1 and 20, would we just add that to the numericality hash, or would we add another argument on the validates in this case?
Yeah, so you would just add a message here, I believe.
Okay, cool.
Let's try that out real quick. So if we say, yeah, so it still gives you this. So like if we say, you know, party size is wrong or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, whatever, you know, whatever you actually want it to be, but yeah.
Cool.
So just
okay,
comma
awesome.
message.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to do is, as you may have noticed, whenever we're refreshing our page, so I'm gonna make a reservation here, that's wrong. We are getting the error message, but you may also notice how our URL changes, right? So whenever we hit the create a new reservation, we are not, according to our URL, we're not on a new page anymore. We have to like add the /new, right? So let's do this again. Watch the URL up here. But once I create the reservation, it's going to go to my /reservations. Does someone know like why the URL shows up as just /reservations?
The form on the new page is sending a post request to the index.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So the because our form makes a post request to /reservations and not /reservations/new, our URL actually changes accordingly. And then what we're doing whenever we get an error, like whenever we're in our else statement, is that we're rendering our new page again, right? Render does not change our URL in any way. Only redirect could change our URL. So render only like renders our new page again. It shows us our error and everything like that. But it also makes it so that our URL is not exactly what it's supposed to be, right? So if a user at this point like refreshes the page, they would be sent to the reservations index, which we just happen to not have. So that's like, not great user experience. So I want to show you a different way that you can show these error messages on the page while maintaining your URL integrity. I don't know if that's a real word, but it is now. So we want to make sure that our reservation/new like stays in our URL, or we maybe we want to redirect the user there. So that's actually what we're going to be doing, is we are going to be redirecting the user to our reservations new page. But the one problem with that is, so let's go ahead and do that. Redirect to new reservations path. Yeah, is that right? Let's check this out. So our new reservation. Okay, so a new reservation path should take us to this exact page with the correct URL. The problem obviously is that our HTTP requests that we're making. So whenever we make a new redirect, whenever we make a new HTTP request, our variables that we previously had are gone, right? So because HTTP requests are stateless, we're not able to keep around our error messages. But there's one cool thing in Rails that Rails it's built into Rails that's called Flash. Flash will allow us to keep a message around for like one HTTP cycle. So making a redirect to somewhere, we keep the message around just for that one redirect, and then if we refresh our page or go somewhere else, that message is going to be gone. So it's like Flash, like it flashes. It's like a flash of a, I don't know, if you can imagine like what the naming is there. So the way that we can use Flash is actually pretty simple. Flash, really all it is a hash. So we can set Flash messages by adding key value pairs to our Flash hash. It's a tough one. Flash. Let's add a key called error. And let's add a value of there was an error. It doesn't really matter what the value is. Obviously later we're actually gonna like put our error messages in there, but we're gonna use this Flash hash in order to show the user our error messages, even after a redirect, but only after one redirect. So let's go back to our form. I'm gonna leave this in here, but I'm gonna comment it out. Let me actually copy this. Okay, so I'm gonna comment this out. Sure that there's a better way, but it's fine for now. Okay. So instead of grabbing our reservation error messages from @reservation.errors.full-messages, because there are never going to be any error messages if we redirect, right? Because we redirect to the new page, we're going to get that reservation new, which will give us this new reservation. So what we want to do here instead, we want to grab our messages from our Flash hash. So I called it error, I think, right? And it is not an array. So let's kind of make this an array, okay? So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say if we have, we're going to say if we have any, I think we can do this, flash.error. We're going to go ahead and iterate over those errors. We're going to show one error at a time. The only difference here is that this only lasts for one redirect cycle. So let's try this out real quick. So if we do 100, new reservation, notice that we're still on the reservations new page, but we are seeing the error. Obviously, this is not a super helpful error, but our Flash is working. If we refresh our page now, that error is going to be gone. Again, Flash will only work for one request cycle, like I guess you want to say like one request cycle after your request, or one time after your request that you're making. Now, instead of showing the string that I showed here, I want to actually keep my like reservation error messages inside of that Flash hash. So I'm gonna get my reservation errors.full messages and put them in my Flash hash here that I'm using on my new form. So now if I change this, create it, I can see the actual error message. Questions?
Question. Could you use Flash to, because with this, when we redirect, we're losing the data that was already in the form. Could you use Flash to repopulate that? Like just maybe use Flash to run into the text fields and display the values for each thing, and then if they refresh, it'll all be gone. But does that make sense the way I'm asking it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's the only like stipulation about the way that we're doing this now, which is that we're not actually pre-filling our form anymore, right? So I don't actually know if there's like a better way of doing this. So if you were to like take the, you'd have to grab the Flash like reservation maybe and build a form for that. But then, how do you,
I don't know. I wonder if you could literally save that instance of that reservation into Flash symbol reservation, and then you'll have access to the entire instance. And then just
that's a good question. I'm not sure we're able to do that. We could try it. But I think this is the one downside to Flash, that we're not able to like pre-fill a form. I'm sure that there's like maybe some solution that someone created. But I was gonna tell you, like from here, I would say it's up to you which is more important to you. Is it more important to maintain the integrity of your URLs? Oh, Brandon is saying that there's another version of Flash that works if you render versus redirect that would prevent reloading. And it also maintains the URL. Back in the same boat. Yeah, it's all about that path. That was a problem that we're trying to solve. But then we have, other problems. Anyway, I personally still prefer like the render way. Even if we go ahead and end up at a different URL, that means that we are able to pre-fill our form with what the user put in, because I feel like that would be more frustrating experience than the other way around. So I'll just kind of leave that up to you. Flash, I feel like Flash is actually great for certain things. I'm not sure that this is like a best example for what you might use Flash for. Flash is cool for, let's see, if you create like a user account, you log in as a user, you're on the next page and you show the user, account was successfully created. This kind of thing. This is what I personally prefer Flash for. But I wanted to show you that, you can use it also instead of rendering here. So that's just another way of doing it. Any other questions here about Flash?
super cool. I mean, that's just awesome.
Yeah, so much built into Rails that just comes out of the box.
So then if you put Flash into the controller, then you can also just display it onto your show or your form.
Yeah, you can display it anywhere. And you can set your Flash messages anywhere as well. So, say we have like, this might actually be a good example here with our save. So if we add like a Flash, message, and we say like successfully created new reservation. And then whatever other page we are redirecting them to, so like a reservation show page, we can show this flash message. Or if we render the index page, we just have to make sure that we are displaying this flash message, if there is any, to the user. But you can show it on any view, and you can set it on any controller action.
So in this case, if the save was successful, the Flash message there would appear on the show page.
Yeah, I guess let's build out this show real quick. So we'll do a show. Awesome. Actually, let's see. Let's send the user. I want to send the user somewhere else. I want to send the user to the customer show page. So like they create the reservation. Let's say they're like on our site, right? They create the reservation. I want to send them to their own page so that there I can have a list of reservations. I already have this show page for the customer. What do I have to change in my reservations controller to send the user to the customer show page?
You would redirect to @reservation.customer.
Redirect to @reservation.customer.
Do we need to add like customer path before it, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not, let's try this out. I'm not sure that this will work. I do believe we need the path, but let's give it a shot. All right, we got, what's that?
I was gonna say, I think this works because
Yeah.
.customer should be an active record thing that returns the instance.
Yeah, perfect. If so, Rails is awesome. I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Squid wizards,
yeah,
man.
this is like too easy. But otherwise, it might be customer path, and then you pass in your customer. So both of those would work. Cool. Super cool. Okay, so now we're sending the user to the customer show page. Did I want to do anything else here? Oh, we wanted to show the flash message. That's right. So on that page, well, can someone maybe take a wild guess what I might need to add in here to show that flash message?
GRB brackets in Flash bracket method or message?
Let's try it out. See if it's that simple. Okay, so let's do another reservation. And we'll create it. And we have this beautiful success message. Obviously, we probably want it to be like styled like green or something, something like that. But point being, we can show this message to the customer. And now if you refresh the page, it's going to be gone. It's just like a one-time thing, right? You submit, successful, you show the user, the customer, and that's it. Sorry, you show the user that flash message. I'm getting my words all mixed up today. Okay. Questions about Flash? Any last questions here? Then we'll do a few more. Yeah.
Will using Flash messages be on the code challenge, or is this just like for future stuff?
It will just be error handling. However you handle those errors is up to you. if you want to use Flash, if you want to use the render way of how we did that earlier. Where did it go? Right here. If you want to do that, that's fine too. But you don't have to use Flash. Okay, so let's add just a few more validations here. We already have validation for party size. Let's add a validation. I want to add a validation that makes it possible for, or that doesn't make it possible to create a duplicate reservation if the customer and the restaurant already have a reservation that connects both of those. So whenever, so let's say I already have a reservation for for Chipotle and Bob. I want to show an error saying that a customer can only reserve at one restaurant one time or something like that. Does someone know how I would go about doing that? Any general ideas?
Can you use the with options if and then run through the validations?
Like write a custom validation is what you mean, or?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, using the with.
We could absolutely write a custom validation. What else? There's like a particular thing that we could use that's already given to us.
So you said the validation is we want to make sure that we can only make one reservation per customer at each restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then the reservation would be validates.
The uniqueness.
I kind of lost the syntax.
Uniqueness.
I'm using validates uniqueness of as a method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we want to still validate a particular model. So let's start with our customer, and from that, we want to validate the uniqueness. Let's spell that right. Yeah, and we can also check for uniqueness here. No, I didn't. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then scope would be restaurant ID.
Awesome. So we can already see like a little example here of pretty much what we're doing. We are going to be validating uniqueness with a certain scope in mind. So the uniqueness of a customer in the scope of the restaurant. So here we're essentially writing this exact validation. Let's go ahead and grab this. Instead of it being a name, it's a customer. And then our scope would be of a restaurant. And then let's add a custom error message. You can only create one reservation. Something like that. I don't know. All right, that works. Cool. So that is like a uniqueness validation to make sure that you can only have this combination of customer and restaurant once, and if you try to create that same combination again, it will give you an error.
So the restaurant in this case for line 7 is the table, the database. It's going to look through the entire database to make sure that the customer does not exist in it. Is that what the restaurant indicates?
We're essentially checking, we are checking in the database. So we're essentially checking, like, let's say we have a customer. Okay, so let's say we have a reservation. And for that reservation, our customer is customer 1 and our restaurant is restaurant 2. If we want to create another reservation with these exact IDs, that wouldn't be possible. If we wanted to say customer 2 and restaurant 2, that's fine. But once we hit that same combination, and we check the reservation like table for this, because that's where the customer and the customer and the restaurant like kind of come together, right? That's our join table. So if that combination like that already exists, we're gonna run into this error. If it doesn't, it's successfully created. Does that answer your question, Brian? Okay. You're muted.
Thank you. It answers it in this question, but if you wanted your scope to be more specific, then, because I was working with this on one of the labs, I couldn't, you could also, I think, do it to a column as well, or is it always to the table or to the ID? Because the messaging there for me on the Ruby Rails wasn't very clear.
Well, it is in relation to like the customer and the restaurant columns in the reservations table. Is that what you mean? I think like once you want to do something more complicated or more specific, you probably have to write your own custom validation for that. If that's helpful at all. Well, let's actually go ahead and like write a custom validation. So let's get rid of this. So if we want to write a custom validation, it's just a method that we define, right? So let's do, what do I have over here? Validate num for party size. We're just gonna do a simple one. In fact, like we pretty much have that in this one already. You're not gonna be expected to do any crazy custom validations or anything like that. This is just more like, hey, this is a thing that you could do. So what we could do here is we could check for, let's see, if we want to make sure that like the party size is actually like an integer, and if we want it to be like greater than a certain amount, and I know that we can already do this right up here, but this is just kind of an example of what a custom validation might look like. So we can, we essentially want to compare, actually, let me start here. What kind of a method is this? We're inside of a class. What kind of a method is this? We have two types of methods. This isn't.
Did we make it a class method?
We have class methods and we have instance methods, right? Which one is this?
Well, with the way it's written right now, that would be a instance method.
Yeah, it's an instance method, right? And we want it to be an instance method because we are trying to validate something, you know, in our case, I guess, party size, on one particular instance of a reservation that we're creating. So we're creating a new reservation. We're running through our validations and checking if like all of the validations go through. And if not, we show errors. But essentially, like we want this to be for one particular instance of a reservation. So if this is if this is an instance method, what is self inside of this instance method?
That instance of the class?
Yes. That particular, what do we have? Reservation instance. Cool. So if we know that self is that particular reservation instance, we can say something like self dot, what do we, what's it called again? Party size. So we can say, hey, if the party size, let's say class, is not equal to an integer, like if we don't have an integer, right, then this should fail. Then we should show an error. Or we could say also if the party size is greater than 30, or what do we have? 20 up there, whatever. Then also show an error. So we can like write any kind of validation in here that we want to. We can like create, like we can use these ones that we automatically get. And usually like if you have a validation that already fulfills your requirements, you probably use, like you don't write your own. But if you want to write something more custom, which this isn't necessarily like super custom, then you want to create your own. And then what we can do in order to like add our at our error messages, we can say self.errors, because remember that that is where we get our error messages from, right? From this error object. So we can say self.errors.add, and then what do we want to add the error for our party size attribute, and then the error should be party size needs to be an integer less than 20 or something. You know, you probably come up with something better. But this is how you would write a custom validation. Now we only wrote a method so far. We actually have to like activate this method, right? We have to call it somehow. So the way that you use custom validations is by saying validate. I believe this is validate, not validates. Make sure. Custom validations. Yeah, validate right here. Yeah. So validate, and then whatever the name is of your validation. So validate for num party size. And that is how you would go about writing a custom validation. Let's try this out. So if we comment out our other validation for the party size, let's make this, we have, oh, let's do less than, sorry. Let's make this 50. Create a new reservation, and wait, this needs to be
Can you
like
change the
more
customer
than
that made it?
yeah, we can do that. Let me try this out real quick. I was just going to say, we are checking like if it's more than, then show the error, right? So this is kind of like opposite. Got it mixed up in my head a little bit. So we are getting our custom error here, right? We're also getting the error message for that the uniqueness error message because we've chosen a restaurant and a customer that already have a reservation. Yeah, and then Nathan, what were you asking?
Oh no, I just thought the other error wasn't showing because it's sort of the same customer, but never mind.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So let's try to actually create one. I don't know what combinations we have and don't have, so we're just gonna try it out, see if that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that works just fine. Nice. Any questions about what we've done today?
This was great, thank you. Totally actually made custom validations make sense with the errors.add.
Cool. Yeah, this is just that error object or the error hash that we previously accessed, like right here, right? So we with the full messages, we essentially get like a combination of what attribute are we actually validating, and like what is the actual error message, right? So that is why we're adding the error here to a particular attribute. Then it will actually, what was the let's try this one more time. I wanted to see the error one more time. Okay, so this is the reason that you want to cut out that first part, because it combines the attribute and the actual error message. You don't need to include the name of the attribute. You can just say, you know, right here we're getting party size. You can just say emit that, and then it should work. Cool. So this is like, yeah.
Would we need to include the space after the quotation, or can we get rid of that too?
That's a great question. Let's try it out. Let's just kind of see what it does. No, you don't need to add the space.
Cool,
Rails
thanks.
is smart enough to figure that out. Awesome. Any other questions? Oh, it's already after noon. I have not been watching the time. Okay. This is pretty much it anyway. This is everything that I wanted to cover. Yeah. Yeah, any last questions about like the many-to-many, the validations, you know? Cool. I'll upload this, and then I think you have a review in the afternoon.